Hi, everyone. I'm Steve here with David Wright again. Thanks for being here, David.
Thanks, Steve.
So, David's a personal trainer at Fitness for 10 in Carson City. If you're in the area, go say hi to him. So, all right, I was telling you before we turn this on, I get some crazy reactions to some of the videos, some of the shorts I do. I am not a scientist, I'm not a researcher, um, I'm a health club owner. Now, I've got quite a bit of background in nutrition and so on. It's what I do in school, but I'm a businessman. I'm an MBA, but I still have been doing this all my life. And so I've learned some things. And so some of the things, we're going to talk about a response I got from one of my shorts about high fructose corn syrup and seed oils. And it was a short that I did about, eating at restaurants and things that you need to be aware of. And response from the guy seemed like kind of a nice guy, and but was just like, tell me you're misinformed. Show me the science. High fructose corn syrup is just sugar. Well, are you listening to yourself? It's just sugar. However, it's way worse than sugar. And even though I'm not a scientist, and I started off as a personal trainer. I was a personal trainer for 8 years. So I did this. I help people with what to eat and all that stuff. You are a nutritionist, or you have a nutrition background with some of your certifications and everything.
hmm
But I thought it was common knowledge that high fructose corn syrup is not healthy. Am I wrong?
I'm kind of with you there, Steve. Even before I got into, you know, working in the fitness industry, professionally speaking, as a career, or even into the nutrition field, yeah, I was fully aware of that. And it's not something that just drops in your lap in terms of that. You might hear things are unhealthy, and some people point back to like, oh, well, eggs were unhealthy and they weren't unhealthy, and then butter was healthy and then it wasn't healthy, all those back and forths. But high fructose corn syrup, for me, among many other things, but that particular one that we're talking about, I've known for, gosh, probably 2 decades. And again, this is before I even got into anything that I'm doing now, career I'm doing now, that it was not healthy for me, my kids, anything else. And even probably 20 years ago, something like that, was looking for things that did not include high fructose corn syrup. So yeah, it's a little bit surprising to me. I know not everybody has specific levels of knowledge and different things, or they've heard from different sources that high fructose corn syrup is just sugar, which that's a whole nother discussion of being just sugar means okay, well it's fine, just put as much sugar as you want in everything, which we know sugar is a whole, we could do a whole video on just sugar by itself. But high fructose corn syrup is even worse than just sugar because it's so
Yeah.
highly processed and toxic. That's why a lot of products today that you'll see in the grocery store, a lot of them will have it, but there will be specific ones that say no high fructose corn syrup. If it wasn't an issue, now it's still highly processed, but there's a lot of people putting labels now on that say no high fructose corn syrup because people are becoming aware. Now, do they put other junk in there? Absolutely. But that particular one, I thought pretty much was a solved, done deal for most people.
I always say to people, do your own research.
Yeah.
That's really important. And I what I try to do on this channel is relate what I've done, what works for me. I my carbs have been up to 150, 175, and that's been high for me. I kind of did that through the summer, maybe 3 months, but now it's catching up with me. My glucose, instead of being 70, it's 90. That's 20 points up. And so now I need to go back. I need to rotate back. So my point with that is that I relate what I do and is it working for me? But the names I get called, shut up, old man, you're a fatso. I'm like going, really? I'm fat? Am I fat, David?
Far from it.
Okay, so thank you. That that helps my security. I'm not feeling so insecure now. But people here, and here's a big thing I always say: when you're doing your own research, research who's paying for the research.
Absolutely.
Apply common sense. And when I use that term, I've even had psychologists saying, well, what's common sense? Come on. What's common sense? It's something that's commonly known, but the psychologists are even come at you. You don't even know what common sense is. I know what the term means, and so do
Right.
you. So stop acting like a moron. But my point is, you have to know who's paying for this research in these scientific studies. How are the studies done? Are they peer reviewed? There's certain things that you can look at to know that I don't really trust this study, or maybe I will trust this study, or look for more information, or am I? Because I look, I do this instead of getting and diving into the research and the studies myself. I try to, when I do my research, I'm listening to doctors, mostly holistic and functional type physicians and nutritionists who I trust. That's what I do. And I tend to listen to them, then I'll dig into it. But everyone's got to look at this stuff for themselves and try it for themselves, because who is paying for the research matters. It matters a lot. And some of these food companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars on studies that have to do with seed oils. And that was the other comment that I made. Seed oils, just go find out how seed oils are made. Just do it yourself. Search it on YouTube. How are seed oils made? And when you do that, because that was the other part of, and he said, seed oils are fine. you know, High fructose corn syrup is no big deal, and seed oils are fine, and you're fat. I didn't get mean or anything, but I was thinking, I wonder who this guy works for. You know,
Yeah.
who's paying him to say this stuff that I I thought everybody knew. It's just general knowledge that seed oils are just abundant in processed foods, and so is high fructose corn syrup. And the video was about, hey, you just can't grab the ketchup off the counter or grab the ketchup off the table when you go eat out. It's got high fructose corn syrup, and you look, yep, that's the number one ingredient. So you can't just grab the salt and the pepper and the stuff off the table when you go eat out. You got to be careful. If you watch the channel, my wife and I always, we bring our own.
Well, and that's the thing is, when we're talking about kind of that comment, that you got, and some of those things, it's very interesting because to your point, with seed oils and different things like that, I think people are generally at least a little less familiar with specific on the oils. It's becoming more and more known these days versus like high fructose corn syrup. I mean, that to me is astounding that anybody in this day and age would say, "Oh no, 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 it's just sugar." And sugar's fine, so just pack it in, right? Forget about diabetes, forget about all these other things that we could talk about for days that sugar itself causes, but it's fine, right? High fructose corn syrup, and like Steve said, don't trust us two guys just talking about it. Do your own research. If there is a specific doctor, nutritionist type of person that you generally trust to get great information, find out what they have to say about it. But that can't be your only thing, your only source. So Steve was talking about, do your own research on top of that. Okay, this is what they were saying. Now I'm going to look into it because, of course, we know we're going to go out onto the web and we're going to look at, YouTube or whatever, and there's going to be thousands of videos on corn syrup or on seed oils, and it's like, well, what do I trust? To your point, very good point. You know, who made the video? Who do they work for? And it's not always nefarious, but people will make videos and they'll say, hey, these seed oils, we've heard they're bad. Here's the things that I've read, or here's what I've researched, and they're great for you. They're wonderful. They have all these health benefits, right? They might be misinformed. They're telling you what their opinion is, right? So that's why it's, again, to look at what studies were done. And it doesn't mean you have to get scientific-y, it doesn't mean you have to understand every term, but they're very simple most of the time to go, okay, what's the conclusion here? You know, and then, somewhere down in the fine print is like, okay, this is who did the study, and then it's like, okay, well, who are these people? Who, do they work for a specific, big conglomerate company that owns massive amounts of things? I mean, there's some companies that make pesticides, but oh, by the way, also own some of the fruit companies, or own some of the vegetable canning companies, or own farms and own all these other things, but they also make pesticides and poisons. So a lot of times they're, the best interests for you are not what they're focused on. It's the dollar, it's the profit margin, it's all these other things, but also slapping on a label that makes you think it's nice and healthy, or even the ones that say, hey, no high fructose corn syrup. Great. They took that out. Wonderful. Applause for about a second. What did they put in there to replace the high fructose corn syrup that's still terrible for you? So again, doing your own research, finding out who did these research studies, and do they work for somebody else, or is it just kind of a misinformed study? Because not every study is going to be 100% for everybody. How did they do the study? What were the different parameters of the study, etc.? I won't get into that for a 20-minute conversation, but there's things where you can just do a quick research, because a lot of people won't want to do lengthy research. Oh, I don't have time, I'm just going to use this particular product. Okay, but you should know what you're eating at the very minimum. Maybe not every single thing. Start with just doing some basic research on things you eat a lot, or things, you go out to this restaurant and they have this brand. Okay, look into that brand, look into what you're eating. A movie from, I think it was the early 2000s, had where, there was poisoned water in the town, and, everybody was drinking this water, and then they say, oh, well, my cancer that I have, it has nothing to do with the water. My doctor said they weren't related. And they're like, well, that company paid for that doctor. And then it blinks in their head going, oh, wait a minute. That's why this doctor who I trusted said that my cancer and my, husband's cancer, none of this has anything to do with it. Well, the company that was putting the poison in the water is the one who paid for that doctor. So of course, in that, particular scenario in a movie, right, based on a real story, um, that's a similar kind of thing here. Heart healthy, good for you, blah, blah, blah. Here's all the studies. Who did the studies? And if a company does a study and says it's great for you, well, what's their incentive? Is it really good for you? Or are they just kind of spinning it that it's good for you because we paid these people, So it's very interesting. It is sometimes a little bit more work than most people want to do, but it's really not that much work to just get on the internet and look. We can all do that.
Yeah, it's is it good for you, or is it good for the researcher's profit? And you're right. There's some crazy stuff out there, um, and I don't know. It just you gotta. It I guess you can't trust. You gotta think for yourself and do your research, and look behind the door. And see what's going on, and think about what is this is heart healthy for grandpa. No, it's not. It's not heart healthy for grandpa. Uh, but we get barraged with information and marketing all the time, and that's why you also got to know your own body. I everything I talk about, 90% of it I do, or I try. If I say I don't like that, it's because I tried it. Or if I say I really like that, it really works for me, it's because I tried it. And I've been doing this for over 45 years. So that's how I do it. And everyone's got to find their way to see what's best for their health. And everyone's different. Not
Mm-hmm.
two people are going to be exactly the same.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Steve. That's kind of how my thought is on it. Because yeah, I mean, we could talk all day about all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, it comes down to each person and really doing what's right and what feels best for you. And really, for everybody, the best thing is, to just, know what you're consuming. And then, when you watch video with Steve and I here talking about things like this, one of the best things, and I do this before if I even react to any kind of video, is I'm going to do my own research and go, you know what, that Steve and that David guy, I watched what they said. I don't know if I've heard that before, so I'm going to look into it and then kind of see what's out there and what the research says and that kind of thing. So then you can form, a really educated opinion to the best of your, ability to do so with the information, which of course, again, we have a lot. Which do you trust? Well, you just kind of look into it a little bit more and kind of figure that out. But, like Steve said, do your research. Don't just trust it because he and I are talking about it and we're pretty much on the same page with all this stuff. But find out for yourself and just, see what that means to you, because at the end of the day, that's your decision. What you're putting in your body and kind of the effects that that's going to have, whether it be in the short term or generally with a lot of these things like high fructose corn syrup. A lot of times it's in the long term when you're young and eating kind of garbage food. Sometimes I won't say that now because there's a lot of things we could talk about that are happening as far as the population now. But generally speaking, when I was younger, eating some of this stuff, it was like, I'm going to live forever and be healthy, even though I'm eating all this stuff. Well, then as you get older, not only, aging things happen, but also what you've eaten in the past and these poison type of things. And I'm going to call it poison because that's really what it does to you. You really start to feel different effects of things. So you've got to be really careful of what you do and how you eat.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say about these studies, which is interesting, is look, why, if everyone's the same, why do they have 100 people or 1,000 people in a study? If everyone was the same with everything, they only need one person. Look at all the studies they could crank out with just one person. And it's the other thing that everyone listening to this has to realize is, hey, for 9 out of 10 people out of the 100 people, this is what happened. It didn't harm them or whatever. Well, what if you're the 1 out of 10 that's not like the other 9 out of 10? So they wouldn't use multiple people if everyone was the same. So you got to realize you're different, know your own body, learn your own body.
I agree.
So David, if people want to find you on social media, how do they do that?
So they can find me at DavidWright_fitness on Instagram. That's kind of my personal page, my fitness journey, show prep, that type of thing, where I'm at now. And then at Wright Fitness Training on Instagram as well for more personal.